Nestled deep within the remote woods of northern Michigan stood an old log cabin, weathered by years of solitude and neglect. The cabin had been in my family for generations, a rustic retreat that had long been abandoned after a series of unexplained and sinister events. As a child, I had heard stories about the place, but they always seemed like tall tales spun to keep curious children away. In the wake of a tumultuous year, I yearned for a secluded escape from the chaos of the world. The cabin came to mind, and I decided to spend a weekend there alone, seeking solace in the embrace of nature. Friends and family warned me about the strange happenings, but I brushed off their concerns. I didn't believe in the supernatural. Part 2. The Arrival. The drive to the cabin was an adventure in itself, a journey through winding, unpaved roads and dense forests. When I finally arrived, the sight of the cabin took my breath away. It was a picturesque retreat, surrounded by towering pine trees and overlooking a serene lake. As I entered, I marveled at the rustic charm of the interior, complete with a stone fireplace and antique furniture. Night fell swiftly, and the isolation became all-encompassing. The only sounds were the chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves. As I settled into the cozy cabin, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Part 3. The Unexplained Phenomena. It didn't take long for strange things to start happening. On the first night, I awoke to the sound of whispering voices outside my window. At first, I assumed it was the wind playing tricks on my ears, but the voices grew clearer and more distinct. They were hushed and urgent, as if engaged in a secret conversation. I ventured outside, expecting to find a lost hiker or a neighboring cabin with its windows open. To my surprise, there was no one in sight. The woods were still, and the voices had vanished as abruptly as they had appeared. The whispers returned each night, always at the same hour. I became obsessed with finding their source, convinced it was a simple explanation, but each time I ventured outside, there was nothing to be seen. The voices seemed to emanate from the very air itself. I started recording the whispers, hoping to decipher their meaning. They spoke in a language I couldn't understand, filled with urgency and despair. As the days passed, the whispers grew louder and more insistent, invading my dreams and echoing through the cabin's walls. Part 5. The Isolation. The isolation weighed on me like a heavy shroud. I had no cell phone signal, and the nearest neighbor was miles away. I began to doubt my decision to come to the cabin alone. The once tranquil retreat had become a place of uneasy, and I felt a growing sense of foreboding. The whispering voices seemed to mock me. Their presence a constant reminder of my isolation. Sleep became elusive, and my nerves were frayed. I was determined to uncover the source of the voices and put an end to this torment. Artes the descent one evening, as the whispers reached a crescendo, I followed their sound to the cabin's attic. It was a dusty and neglected space, filled with old books and relics from generations past. In the dim light, I discovered an ancient journal that belonged to my great-grandfather, Elias. The journal spoke of a dark secret that had plagued the cabin for generations. Elias had heard the same whispers and had tried to uncover their origin. He wrote of hidden tunnels beneath the cabin and rituals conducted by the Native American tribes that once inhabited the land. It seemed that the cabin had been built atop a sacred site, and these spirits were restless. With newfound determination, I decided to investigate the tunnels beneath the cabin. Armed with a lantern and the journal as my guide, I descended into the darkness. The tunnels were claustrophobic and filled with a palpable sense of malevolence. As I ventured deeper, I encountered the spirits themselves. They materialized before me, their faces etched with sorrow and anger. They spoke in the same hushed voices, pleading for release and retribution. I stumbled upon an ancient altar, adorned with relics and symbols of long-forgotten rituals. With trembling hands, I began to dismantle it, hoping to appease the restless spirits. The cabin shook as if in protest, but I persisted. As the last symbol was removed, the whispers ceased, and the spirits dissolved into the ether. The cabin grew calm, and a sense of peace washed over me. Part 8. The Return. I emerged from the tunnels, exhausted and shaken, but the cabin was finally silent. The weight of the centuries-old curse had been lifted. I left the cabin the next day, vowing never to return to that place of haunting whispers and ancient secrets. The experience had forever altered my perception of the world, leaving me with a newfound respect for the supernatural. The cabin in the woods had shown me that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, and some places are better left undisturbed. It was a lesson learned in isolation, a tale of the unexplained that would stay with me for the rest of my days.